Hi, welcome back, and this is my wrap-up with Captain Swiss, Angels, and Old School to see how the last three posts went. My name's Chamchi Gimbub, and I am the Political Fish. Welcome to my final hangout of the afternoon, evening, or morning, depending on where you are in the world. Why don't you guys introduce yourself, starting with Old School, and then pass it on to the next person.
Hello, yeah, you'll recognize me from the previous videos. Just venturing in, anarchist guy. Been involved in certain movements and stuff for a long time, and now I want to get in on the online sphere. So that's me.
Captain Swiss.
I'm Captain Switzerland.
I was going to say ladies first. Go ahead.
I'm Captain Switzerland. I make videos on my YouTube channel talking about politics and the rest of it. And contrary to perhaps popular belief, the image of Tim Farron in my profile picture, I'm not awfully fond of him. Although we probably both like a glass of milk every now and then.
Or cow juice, as I call it, with my kids. You know.
Yeah, it's for baby cows after all.
I don't know whether we have some of the vegans watching, but so I will introduce myself. That was a nice segue because they are not too happy that I enjoy drinking milk and enjoy experiencing other animal products too, which I know doesn't go down terribly well with them. But I'm Angels. I am a kind of like a channel regular on Swisses. I don't make a lot of content myself, but I just kind of jump in and give my 2 cents every now and again. And they kind of hate me for being a Londoner and a centrist and a Remainer. And I mean, what else do I get the bullet for? Pretty much everything, right?
All right.
Anyway,
okay.
So hello.
Oh, welcome. I didn't mean to, say Swiss next. It's just I've got this habit of reading right to left. Oh, she's gone.
Angels?
She'll be back. Oh, yeah. She'll be back. Don't worry.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, I'm going to save my explanation for when she comes back. Oh, she keeps popping in and out.
It happens. It's a internet connection over there in the land of legalized cannabis.
All right. Shall we connect it? Oh no. Do it after this smoke, mate. Finish the joint first before we plug her back in again.
Hey guys. No, don't worry. I didn't rage quit. The internet just cut out for a second.
Yeah, we were just covering that. I didn't mean to. Like Japanese manga, you read right to left. So I was just going as the windows appear on my screen. I've got me, then Old School, and then Captain Swiss, and then you. And I was just going through one by one, so it wasn't anything.
Don't worry about it. Like seriously, you cannot get butthurt when you're a Remainer on Swiss's channel from London and stuff. Like it's fine.
So got to develop a tough skin.
Yeah, too right.
So before we jump into anything a bit too intense, what is this bullet thing I keep hearing? I don't know what it is. I'm not part of this in joke. Like,
Christ, this has been an in joke with us for a while now, hasn't it? The whole bullet thing.
Yeah.
There was, I think there must have been like a big rally or a protest somewhere in America. And somewhere left behind was some graffiti spray painted on a wall, and it said "Liberals get the bullet too," and then like a little hammer and sickle, like the little communist logo. And like one day on one of my streams, it might have been, it was either like Psychobenz or Cameron Hickman, I can't remember. They just commented "Liberals get the bullet too."
Cam, it was Cam.
Was it Cam? Yeah, and we just ran with it, and then just like it became a long running meme that when the far left, sorry Old School, come and rise up and sort of create their new utopia. Everyone's getting the bullet, and by constantly debating who's going to get the bullet first, will it be the Tories, then the Liberals, then the soft socialists, or will it be the far right, then the Tories, and we just do all that basically.
And in which case, so now it's been explained to you who does get the bullet first. Is it because you're not a fan of sort of what I'd call traditional conservatives? Or actually, no, because traditional conservatives have the whole paternalistic type thing. But you probably hate, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but you probably hate the kind of ideological, austerity-driven conservatives worse, like Dominic Raab and all of those like psychopaths.
I don't like any Tories, to be honest. I hate all Tories, and I do think that with regards to conservatism, is concerned, it is just a dying ideology, and the Tories are a dying party, and I'm starting to feel the same for anybody, well, not anybody, not yourself, Angels, present company accepted. That's anybody that's centrist, to be honest, because it's something that has failed, and it's proven to fail in our own economy.
That's a difficult thing to say, though, because, you know, Swiss, we were talking the other day, and obviously the centre alters depending on what era you're in.
Sure.
So, like, there is always, so technically there is always a centre ground, but where exactly on the political pendulum that is obviously changes.
Okay, but I also feel that if you can't decide whether you're on the right or the left, then you need to decide.
Decide. You're either with us or against us.
You do. Like I'm with you that the Everton window does shift, and this is something that we touched on our stream with Old School. It does shift, and as you know, as we mentioned, it does need to get wider. But if you're literally on that fence, like the Lib Dems, right? The problem with trying to make everybody happy, you know what happens is you make nobody happy and everybody's bloody miserable, and that's basically what I've lived with throughout my entire life. Miserable fucking people, right? I just can't deal with it anymore.
Look, I'm from London. All you have to do is go on the tube, and you're from my neck of the woods anyway, so you probably know exactly what they all look like. But where I would disagree is that the good thing about having what I would call maybe more like less of, I don't know, like being in one camp kind of thing, sort of nailing your colours to the mast, as it were, and being tribal, is that can then cloud your judgment.
I agree with you. I definitely agree with you. It's not a football game at the end of the day, is it?
That's what I mean. And the thing I like to sort of almost set aside is an issue by issue basis approach, because I feel like when you're talking about stuff, for example, that I believe should be cross-party and not at all tribal, like the National Health Service is the perfect example, right? There obviously this government is failing spectacularly to fund it correctly, to sort it out. That should be something, because it benefits everybody, that needs a cross-party approach. I don't like the fact that we still have this kind of juvenile approach where it's like, it's this team versus that team and this one wins and that's great. Like, it just, these issues are too serious and they impact too many people to have that. It's one of the reasons why, yes, people take the piss out of me for being a centrist or like an issue by issue person. Like, and obviously I'm not a member of any political party, by the way. But it just happened to be that I voted Lib Dem in the 2017 election. But that's the approach that I have. I don't think that tribalism has got us anywhere now. In fact, if anything, I think it seems to have polarized us.
Well, I would say that the Brexit vote polarized us.
But I think obviously it was already there, though. I think that's sort of. Oh, definitely.
And it just brought it up to the surface, kind of.
Yeah. All I think it did was just exacerbate what was already bubbling, kind of under the surface.
Yeah. I mean, I'm very much on the kind of side where if you've got some piece of literature, if you've got some information that you think will change my mind and drag me back towards the center, then I'm all up for reading it, assuming it's nothing from the right. I've tried it, mate. I've tried it, and I really didn't like it. And I'm one of those people that when the information changes, I change my mind, and this is something.
Yes, exactly.
When I was talking to Kate about the gun issue, it is something I've moved quite significantly on, just because I also realize what a hopeless fucking basket case America is with regards to the gun situation, you know. And this is something that Kay couldn't really understand when I was trying to talk, when we're trying to have that discussion. Jack James, yes, I am a Remainer, but if you go back to Swiss's last stream, I did talk about my position now, and I would think it would be unethical now to stop Brexit. So I would recommend going back to that.
You're a Remainer, but you support the result, basically.
Oh yeah, of course. I respect democracy in all its forms.
I don't. I never will. Democracy gets
Yeah, Angels have said to me before, oh, you know what, sometimes they get it wrong. If they get it wrong, then...
They do. And sometimes a bit of authoritarianism is exactly what we fucking need.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Christ. Or non-authoritarian centrists. That's the worst.
Well, isn't it as like crazy as a radical centrism? Like, what even is radical centrism, and who even made up that term?
Macron, he's radical centrism. It's more of the same, but a fuck ton more of the same.
Oh, I see. Okay, right. Fair enough. No, that's just drunk after 2 spritzers. Me. No. You carry on. Otherwise, I'll probably rabbit on for ages.
That's all right. In regards to at least the political centre ground, I can understand what you were saying, Angels, in regards to sort of, it seems like a pragmatic approach, to kind of get both sides and be like, well, how can we reconcile the differences between these two people on a case-by-case basis, and what's going to be in the end better off for everybody involved, and I can understand that. I just think that when it comes to the sort of like systems like capitalism, there is inherent ideological motives and undercurrents and effects of an economic system like that, which is like inherently unbalanced and unstable, and all of these like critiques of capitalism. And I don't see at any point where sort of you could try and tweak capitalism to be better for everybody. Do you know what I mean? So I see the center as kind of like it's like an invalid political position, because ideologies go much deeper than that. Do you know what I mean?
I'm reading this great book at the moment. It's called 4 Futures. Okay. And it starts with the premise that capitalism will end, either by one of 2 ways. This will either be because of our ecological disaster, either through ecological disaster or through technological automation. Right. These are 2 contradictory positions if you think about it. Okay, because technological automation would mean that there's a surplus for everybody. Ecological disaster will mean that there is there's basically a worldwide famine, and lots of places will become uninhabitable. So it starts off from these 2 inconsolable kind of almost contradictory positions, and what the guy tries to do is say, we've got 1 of 4 ways out of this, right, out of this situation within our lifetimes. This is and let me just get the details up of the book. 4 Futures, Life After Capitalism by Peter Fraze, and I'm only like into chapter 2 or 3 of the book, but it's kind of a really interesting situation, because he starts from that premise, with these 2 contradictory positions, and you have to assume that the fact that because of either one of these happening, that capitalism would have to end. And anybody that tries to carry this through, I think, especially with neoliberalism, we can see it now, is you're literally flogging a dead horse. I really think so. But yeah. Anyway, the reason why did we stop this? Why did we start this stream? Oh yeah, a wrap up.
Bit of a wind down.
Yeah, a bit of a wind. Supposed to, not to get more intense.
Right.
I mean,
so,
Angels or Swiss, do you have any sort of input or questions or thoughts on, you know, what we were chatting about?
Well, like, I was just trying to get my head around, you know what I'm like, it's like a nice, safe, boring centrist. So, like, for me, obviously, it's quite interesting to learn about all of these views of both of you. But when I said extreme libertarianism, I didn't mean, I feel like the word libertarian has been hijacked somewhat, especially from influences from the US. Now, obviously, I'm a linguist, so I know that the word itself obviously just literally means like freedom.
Yeah.
So it's not quite the same thing. Like what is conjured up now by the word libertarian is different to the actual meaning of it, you know, linguistically. So I would say that you're more of a libertarian linguistically, as it were, and not like one of these, you know, like not sort of this new version that's been kind of adopted by certain elements of the right in the US as one example, but it's probably multi-country, I'd say.
No, you're completely correct on that. And I think it's
I thought I covered that actually. Did I not cover that?
I think we mentioned it, yeah. But I think I don't know, because I quite like the idea of libertarianism just in general, like it as a because there's a philosophy behind it and that. Do you know what I mean? But because there is a philosophy behind it, you can use that kind of idea to justify all kinds of different political arrangements and ideologies and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? So I can see it's a term that is easily co-opted. Do you know what I mean? Libertarian socialism, at least, you know, there is a concrete philosophy behind that, and so I think as soon as this is the problem again with like you know, like buzzwords and the internet and all this stuff and the lack of like
you're right.
Is that like if one of these people who like is I'll tell you what, there's a website called Poll Dare that I found on Reddit one time. And it's like a, you know, like it matches you with somebody of a different political opinion.
All right.
But you're all completely anonymous, and it's just like private chat between somebody of completely different political spectrum of yours. And there's people on there like that call themselves libertarian, and I offer and I'm like, have you heard of, you know, libertarian socialism? And they break down, man. Some of them are like, what? That is a complete contradiction of terms.
Yeah, it's an oxymoron as far as people that anybody who's never read a book on the left is no, it's impossible. It's an oxymoron. No chance.
What you mean? People on the left read like, because do you right? Actually, this is a question that I wanted to pose to you guys earlier in the stream. Me and Swiss and a couple of the others were talking. I think yesterday, even as recently as yesterday, they're all merging into one at this point. That's what you get for drinking in the afternoon and being in the land of legalized weed. But yeah, we were saying how there's been an interesting shift in. We have quite a lot of classism in the UK anyway. I actually notice it more. Chamchi, you're totally right. When you get out of the country, you see it much more with like a helicopter view, because you can associate it with being elsewhere, and you actually understand exactly where we're coming from as far as a country and what the general trends are. I think we have a massive classist kind of culture in the UK. Definitely.
Yeah.
And what I felt was really interesting is that we've sort of done a bit of a U-turn politics-wise, in the sense of we now have a lot of the what I would class as like the white working class vote, very often over the age of, say, 48 to 50 plus, switching to the Conservatives, which actually used to be the aristocracy and the upper class vote.
Yeah.
And then a lot of the educated middle class vote going to Labour, the Greens, the Liberal Democrats, and that kind of thing. Why do you think that is? Because their ideologies have shifted somewhat, but not enormously. So why would there be this sudden trend?
I was actually listening to this yesterday, and I was in the chat, and I did catch a bit of it, and yeah, it is a very interesting conundrum. I would like to comment with some kind of, you know, really thought out explanation. But I really just think it's just how education's changed and how information's changed. And rather than, I really think that with the information coming through the internet, and a lot of people getting their news now from alternative sources, you know, it's basically what we were talking about earlier, Anarchist, and how, or Old School, and how the right literally has a grip, and that is generally like the older people and the uneducated, and the uneducated will just look to places like the Sun and the Daily Mail. They think, because they are more trustworthy sources, because I suppose they have a bigger pedigree, I suppose. Then
do you think the angle to this though is entirely propaganda, or do you think that there may well be a sort of a realistic shift in the terms of, I don't know how the working class views the Labour Party versus the Tory Party?
Yeah, I'll give you my little 2 cents on this. When we talk about, you know, the white working class and that, and how nowadays, exactly what you said, Angels, how it's kind of had a bit of a shift. But if you look at it from the perspective of, you know, far left politics, and you go back to sort of like, you know, the old Labour movement and the Labour movement within America, and the unions and the strikes and all that kind of shit, and even Russia, at the forefront of all of these previous revolutions in the, you know, in the age of like between the 30s and what have you, and the 40s, this was all white working class men, mostly, backed up by a lot of women, because, you know, but at the forefront of it, it was a movement that was for the working class, and in majority white countries. I think somewhere along the line of political sort of development, and a lot of it has probably got to do with how after the Labour movement, all, you know, with Thatcher and that, she smashed all the unions, and in America they smashed all the unions, and the idea of like working class culture, and like, you know, fucking social clubs and working men's clubs and all that kind of stuff.
Sorry. Yeah.
So
this is actually a work call I have to take, but I'll be back in just 2 minutes.
Okay. No worries, Angel.
Okay.
But yeah, what I was saying is, I think that sort of culture, working class sort of pride, if you will, and as a movement, as a collective movement, has completely been smashed out of culture. And nowadays, people look at the working class, and you start down the road of just looking at people on the dole, and kind of like, because they're kind of like the underclass that represent, like, you know, the sort of bottom rungs of society and that. But at the end of the day,
I completely agree with it. Sorry to chip in there.
No, go ahead.
You were just about finished, weren't you?
Yeah, just about. I ramble sometimes, so feel free.
I think Swiss had touched on something there. I think the use of propaganda through the 80s and 90s, and of course the noughties, and now, you know, the last 8 years, especially with things like poverty porn, and you know, I think 80s was, you know, like the Sun and the Mail, posting things, you know, trade unions are bad, this is why, look at them, they're not even turning up to do a day's work, here they are demonstrating. There was no real address as to why they were demonstrating, you know. And it's this, and I do think propaganda played a big part in it, you know, especially in the 80s. But I think now, especially in the last couple of years, like 3 years, people are starting to see things like poverty porn as absolutely just disgraceful and distasteful, and people are starting to realize, actually, well, you know, maybe trade unions are good. Maybe trade unions, because they're starting to realize, you know, with the rollout of 0 hours contracts, you can only push the line so far before people start going, well, hang on a minute, especially when people are being laid off. yeah, going to claim benefits, putting on a workfare program, getting the same job back, doing the same hours, but just getting JSA for it. You know, there's only so much people will take before they start saying, well, no, sorry, this is fucking wrong. And now, you know, the pendulum is swinging back the other way. Do you understand, Swiss? Does that make sense?
I follow what you're saying there. I think that, you know, the likes of the internet, social media, all the rest of that, it's an incredibly useful tool for us to start fighting back as far as the narrative goes. But I mean, we were talking about echo chambers and bubbles and stuff the other day, weren't we?
Yeah.
I think the problem that exists, though, is for the most part, people who believe similar sorts of things keep to themselves. You know, the far left keep to the far left, the far right keep to the, well, I mean, the far right can keep to themselves as far as I'm concerned. But you know, people who follow certain narratives as looking at things, they rarely ever cross streams. Aside from when they're like arguing over stuff on Twitter where they come across each other.
I think, yeah, but there is always a place for the echo chamber, especially for someone that's just getting into something like the left or, you know, radical points of view. I really hope I will go out there and try and burst every fucking echo chamber on the right, but on the left, yeah, definitely, yeah, it's nice if you're just getting into the left. Like if like me 5-10 years ago, just realizing that, you know, racism, it can actually be a legitimate, not in my eyes, but a legitimate political stance. You know, when I heard that fucking blew my mind. It's like, how can that actually happen? You know,
I don't. Oh, sorry to interrupt there. I'll just say I don't view racism to be a legitimate political stance, but I think that it's a reality of life. It's a reality that exists out there for a very large number of people in the country that at the very least needs to be acknowledged in order to get through to people. Yeah,
this is my point. I mean, like to you, me, or anybody with any ounce of common sense, it's not a legitimate standpoint. But in, you know, the 1930s Germany and Austria, it was very, very legitimate. You know, it was dressed up in all sorts of different guises, but, you know, if you break it down, boil it down, that's essentially what it is. It was bigotry and racism, and it was a legitimate political stance, you know. And now those tricks have got, in some ways, cleverer. In other ways, they're just as dog whistly as what they were in the 1930s, and you just see a cycle of them going round and round and round and round.
And
you know,
I'm gonna just throw in. Have you guys heard of like the Harmsworths? You know, Harold Harmsworth, the first Viscount of Rothermere. Some like
oh yeah.
These people were like the owners and, like, you know, of like national newspapers and stuff like that. They started pretty much what became the Daily Mail and the Daily Mirror. But I've got his Wikipedia article up in here. Yeah, Harold Harmsworth is the you know, a pioneer of popular journalism. But at the time, he was supporting the fucking Nazis. He was trying to push fascism in Britain, and he used these newspapers to not only push that narrative, but to manipulate the working class into supporting not only his fucking bourgeoisie bastard lifestyle, but like the fascism at the time. Do you know what I mean? And we've still got these papers today, and you can still see their roots because they're still trying to fucking echo like racist rhetoric. And you know, it's blatant when you look at it. You know what I mean? It's almost like it's just blatant because these Harmsworths, there's loads of them today, you know, and they support the Tories and shit. Like they're a big aristocracy family who've been in business and fucking hands in hands with the British fucking state for like hundreds of years. Do you know what I mean? And it's not hard to find these fucking people.
Swiss, can I ask a favor, mate? Because I'm really bad with this. Can you keep track of the messages on the chat, like
the comments? Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And then if anything jumps out that we should talk about, like mention it, because I'm really bad. Unless anybody highlights me in particular, I won't notice it.
I'll read out a few from Cameron Hickman most recently, actually, because it's an interesting counterpoint to what's just been spoken here. Cameron Hickman says the Nazis didn't get in power for their racism, as most historians such as Ian Kershaw argue this. I recommend reading The Hitler Myth by Ian Kershaw. Hitler offered an economic revolution and, well, quote, making Germany great again. In fact, there was a huge backlash against anti-Semitism actions by the Nazis in the early 30s. If I can just add to this really quickly before you guys respond, there was I think it was a documentary series I was watching about. It was on Netflix, Hitler's Inner Circle or something like that. Sort of all of Goebbels and everyone else, all of his right hand men that he had around him, and it was exploring the idea actually that as far as the whole anti-Semitism shtick went, as far as the German people being sort of buying into it, Hitler and the Nazis had already got into power at that point, and then they were kind of working over the public, basically slowly bringing them around to the idea of, oh, why aren't our economic reforms working? Oh, it'll be those pesky Jews. They're the ones who are doing it. And so I would kind of argue from a similar point of view that I don't think Hitler got into power because of the racism and anti-Semitism.
No, I think
the more he was able to convert the public into thinking that way once he had the mechanisms of propaganda at his disposal.
I would agree with that. I was just using shorthand. Sorry, I was just, it was just a shorthand way of making my point. I agree. What I would say,
guys, by the way, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
I would say, to bring parallels to our current government, it was austerity that led to the rise of the Nazis, and it wasn't the need for racism. It was the Second World War and the First World War and the brutal backbreaking austerity measures that came to Germany that led to the rise of Hitler. I would say was more in key. So
what can I also add, and I've thought this for quite some time now, right? Is that if you sort of, I mean, I'm no obviously economic expert by any means, but I have read into certain things and I understand obviously the kind of side effects of certain ideologies when it comes to economic programs and stuff. But since there's little to no evidence to prove that austerity as a general ideology even works, why is it so heavily sort of invested in? It's a bit like a flat earth theory. There's little to no evidence it actually does anything. No country historically has cut their way to prosperity.
Can I take this one quickly? And I'm probably gonna echo something that Stizer says quite a lot on my channel, actually. It's because I think the government has done a bang-up job in convincing the public out there that the running of a country and the running of an economy is akin to running a household, and running the finances of both run along the same principles. And I think that is how they've managed to peddle people this lie, basically.
But I mean, surely. I know that Stizer always, and I feel this is slightly unfair, but I agree to him to some extent. He always says the British voting public are absolute fucking idiots, right? Now, I wouldn't quite go that far, but
unless they vote for Brexit.
Well, I think the idiots definitely swung that one, but having done telling in polling stations and literally having, I know it's obviously mainly local, but a similar kind of thing, sort of seeing your caliber of individual walking in, you can sort of start to understand it, because whilst us lot on here, regardless what our views are, obviously, lots of us differ and that kind of thing, but to some extent, like me and Swiss always say, we are to an extent a political anarchy sort of type, and that's unusual. That's not your average person. If you stop somebody in the street, they're not likely to be inclined in that particular way. So obviously it's very, very different. So do you think that's how they get away with this ridiculous, ludicrous lie? Because
of course, completely, 100%.
So it's a bit like I sound like a total conspiracist, but I've always said that governments, when it comes to, if they want to stay in power and cling on by their fingernails like this one is, because it's obviously completely incompetent. Everyone with half a brain can see that, even Tory voters. But they are banking on a dumb electorate in order to keep them in power. So Turkey's Christmas is ideal for them, isn't it? The moment somebody has half a brain, the moment somebody is literally capable of critical thinking to go, hold on, this is not working for the vast majority of people. There's little to no evidence to actually back it up. Maybe I won't vote for it again. You know what I mean?
Like, Angels, I've got a question for you then on the same vein, right? Now in school, I was this is Heathside School, by the way, which is just round the corner from you. I was taught the differences, and I went to a synagogue to learn about Judaism. I went to a mosque to learn about Islam. I went to different kinds of churches to learn about this in religious studies, right? But I was never taught about socialism. I was never taught about fascism. I was never taught about communism. I was never taught about any of these different anarchism or anything like that, right? All I was always taught was Nazis, fascists, bad, Russia, communists, bad, and that was it. That was as far as
the extent of your political studies.
Exactly. And so and I think that's I'm not sure if it's got any better. Well, I doubt it, considering the funding's been sucked out of schools. But I would like to know anybody that's much younger than me to pipe in and say, has it changed? Like,
as far as sort of political education goes in schools. I don't remember receiving a great deal of education about politics when I was in school, to be honest. I kind of vaguely remember a couple of lessons where we might have learned what the EU was and what the British Parliament is. But I'm really having to reach to try and remember what that was about. I don't remember any serious content on the different ideologies, the way that a modern democracy works, politics and ideology in the context of the world wars that we participated in. They teach you about World War II and they go, oh, here was Hitler and the Nazis, these were the bad guys. Here was Joseph Stalin and the communists, these were the bad guys. And here was Churchill and the Americans, we were the good guys. And that's about as far as they penetrate into it. So yeah, and one other thing that's shocking to me, I'll just add quickly, I received no education either about the Troubles in Northern Ireland in school. There was no mention of that, and I was, and like, there's not an awful lot of in-depth information about it that's on the standard media
even
either.
now. Like it's a bit like, well, you were chatting with Gerard about this yesterday, weren't you?
Yeah, that's right. Like,
and
most of the
that was a really good chat. That hour, I learned so much.
Me too.
About the Troubles and the different parties and stuff and their histories. He's a really good talker. Like, get him back.
Yeah. Well, he tends to jump in, but he's not like the most chatty. Sometimes
I could tell, but he didn't waffle. He gave very little opinion. He said that this, and this, and he gave a very historical account. And I thought that was brilliant. If you know, for a very short, concise video, because it's only about an hour, I thought it was brilliant. I learned so much listening.
Me too. But like, actually, that's one of the reasons why I was quite shocked, because I thought, well, political anoraks such as we are to, certain extents. You're like, it's almost kind of shocking that we don't know more about it, that there's not more in like mainstream media when it comes to Northern Irish politics and stuff, especially since it's literally part of the UK. So like, it has a direct impact on the unionism of our country, and yet none of us literally know about it because it's not really pushed, is it?
Yeah, considering it's right on our doorstep, and it's like recent history that's affected us quite a lot. So yeah, that's just one thing that I'm slightly gobsmacked by. That so much about the Good Friday. Well, I mean, the Good Friday Agreement was ongoing when I was a little kid, anyway. But so much about the recent history of Northern Ireland, the Republic, and the Troubles there's no education about it. There's no teaching about it in schools. Everything I've learned, I've had to piece together since then.
I think it's because it's shameful, the history behind that. Like, the British government ain't gonna fucking teach the kids about that, are they? It's
probably.
It's shameful. I think
do.
it speaks to the wider sort of issue of like a democracy relies on, you know, an informed and active populace. And I think if that was the case, yeah, if everybody was informed and active, then we'd have had an anarchist revolution fucking years ago. Like they rely on the populace to not be informed on certain issues, to not be active and involved in certain issues.
Of course,
yeah, fucking in the game. You know what I mean?
But this goes back to, I mean, I always refer to that quote because it's one of my favorites and it's totally true. You know, it goes back to the Nero quote of give them bread and circuses. You know what I mean? You keep them dumb. You keep them like slightly amused with fucking bullshit like Coronation Street and Sky News. And then, you know, you're fine because you can basically sort of make the turkeys vote for Christmas again and again and again with absolutely no backup or evidence whatsoever. Like, isn't it interesting how the vast majority of governments, and I will actually point this out, including the Labour governments, have actually opposed mandatory politics in schools from the age of 8. So I've always wanted politics to be taught on a very in-depth scale from the age of between like 8 and 10, pre-adolescence, because then, you know, nobody cares about anyone other than like losing your V plates when you're like 14. It needs to be taught like much earlier, so people can actually soak it up. Because obviously, as we know, kids are like sponges when it comes to learning. And so I feel like that should be put across much earlier in an impartial manner, and they should be able then to form their own opinions rather than sort of it never being taught, like this impartiality stuff being peddled the entire fucking time. And then by the time they literally get to like late teens, it's done. Like they're already apathetic and they're already, you know, these fucking morons that are voting against their own interests the entire time. So I don't know. I genuinely think that's where we start. We've got a long way to go, but that's where we start. We need educated people, and they need to learn it in school young.
Yeah. What I feel, and I think we're heading on the tinfoil hat conspiracy theories. Is if you go to these schools like you know, Eton and Westminster, and you know, all these you know, highbrow schools. I really think that they are actually taught this kind of thing because they believe that they're teaching future leaders, you know. And they're given a completely different.
You mean like Eton, etc.
Harrow, Eton, you know, right? You know, they're given a completely different education because I believe that, you know, well. I believe maybe I don't have any evidence to back it up, but it's an idea, I suppose. Let's put it as far as an idea. I have an idea that, you know, that the schools have said, okay, well, you teach this syllabus, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and you teach this to the plebs, and you know, all your sons and daughters of the monarchies and the you know, James Cameron's sons and daughters. Thatcher's sons and daughters, all on that kind of side. Okay, we're going to give you a completely different education, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. But what we'll do is rather than just say, okay, we're going to leave it at that. Like the left says, hang on, you've got to give us a lifeline here. Okay, we'll give you 11+ in grammar schools, right? And scholarships. Okay, so what they do is at 11+, they give you a test. Right, to everybody at 11, which gives you entry to a grammar school, which could then lead to something like Oxbridge, right? But you are not prepared for it at all during your first 6 years of education. Yeah. So the only way you can actually prepare for it is if you have, you know, private tutors or you're exceptional.
Well, I mean, look, I know that sounds really conspiratorial, but I completely agree with that. This goes back to my entire thing of, and actually from personal experience, right? I'm one of those like freaks that went to. Sorry, by the way, if you hear background noise, I'm like trying to put on war paint at the same time as being on this stream. But I'm one of those freaks that like did really well at like you know, like comprehensive schools. Basically ended up going post 11 to a all-girls private school, which is a really good one, and you know, just ended up doing well. I had really my pick of universities. All of my universities were like red bricks. One was Cambridge, and I actually turned Cambridge down before it turned me down, which I'm always quite proud of. But I've seen both sides, and I completely agree with you. The kids that I was in my interview at Cambridge with, and I got pulled, so I actually got called back about two or three times, right? And I did the sit-down exam and everything. They were molded into those from the age of almost 0. These were people that went to prep schools by the age of 2, that were wearing school uniforms by the age of 3. They had basically spent their entire lives being invested in by their rich families and being shaped into being one of those people. I've seen it firsthand. I know it exists. And I think personally in the UK, I think that we're particularly bad for it. Like I said, I think that the classist system is so ingrained that you can't really rip it away from people. And I also feel like the vast majority of people being screwed over by that sort of thing, by that layering, and by that sort of the haves and the have-nots. I mean, I know that Stizer bangs on about it, but he does come up with some good points. Like he, you know, it is a massive have and have-not thing. You know, like I joke about the whole Waitrose shopping thing and all this, but that's actually true. Like there are a bunch of people that can't afford to do their weekly shop there.
Waitrose is pretty posh, man.
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, I agree. I love it, right? I'd rather be in debt. I'd rather be in debt and shop at Waitrose, but like, anyway, my point being is, yes, you're absolutely right. That is deeply ingrained in UK sort of thinking.
Well, like I'm glad someone's going to back me up. I was going to say, well, grab your tinfoil out. Hang on a minute, is this line with the
has anybody seen the oh, sorry, Mark.
Go on,
sorry to interrupt. Yeah, I'm going to have to jump out. I need to go check out this Theresa May, Jeremy Corbyn, Russia exchange, because quite a lot seems to have gone on with that. Well, I need to be in the know about it because it looks like there's a massive thing blowing up with it in terms of, so I'm going to have to do a bit of research on that so I can do a quick stream on it before I've got other things to do today. But Champchi, thank you very much for having me on, by the way. I've really enjoyed the stream.
I don't know what to do next. What do you want to do? Do you want to watch Jeremy Corbyn or and Theresa May, or do you want to stay here? What do you want to do in the chat? What do you want to stay here?
Yeah. The chat can tell us, but I mean, I'm happy to stick around for a little bit whilst I finish off the war paint and discuss conspiracy.
I wasn't going to start streaming until you guys have finished anyway. I wasn't going to start stepping on your toes or nothing.
Oh, okay. Well, how long do you reckon?
I need to have a look into it. Probably about 20 minutes, 30 minutes, however long it was.
Okay. Well, here's one for you, right? In 20 minutes, half an hour, once it's finished, send us a message, right? We'll jump on the stream with you, and you can give us the rundown, give us the highlights, take notes and whatever, and then we'll give our opinion thereafter.
All right, sweet, nice one.
Good plan.
Right, I'll catch you guys in a little bit then.
In a bit.
All right, I'll see you in a bit.
In a bit.
Just want to cover the rest of the comments. Just seen Jack James and a couple of the other guys have been discussing stuff. Road Dog, this goes back to my Nero comment, I think. X Factor and Dancing on Ice being the circus, give them bread and circuses, the Emperor Nero, very famous quote. That's why I don't watch. Same, I don't watch that bullshit either. I feel like I'm losing brain cells every time it comes on. Jack James says,
sorry, just to jump in on X Factor. Like when people started talking about fucking Jeremy Corbyn, when he first got, he can't dress smart, can't even brush his hair, can't even wear a suit, can't wear a tie, can't do this, can't do that. I was like, fuck's sake, it's not X Factor. Look at the fucking policies, mate. Like,
well, this is it. But actually, like, I'm not totally convinced by Corbyn myself, as you know, right? I used to be a member of the Labour Party. No, he's somewhat more of a meme rather than I take him seriously. You know what I mean? But
even Daddy Vince.
Oh no, I love a bit of Daddy Vince. He's like an entirely different kettle of fish. But then
now you're creeping me out, mate.
Look, I'm not going on about dirty touching up Uncle John McD.
No, I just said he wants to read me a bedtime story, mate. What's wrong with that?
Okay, read me a bedtime story.
Right,
but like,
nice Marxist bedtime story, Uncle John McPhee.
oh my gosh, no, but you know how we were like saying, right, when I went back to this entire thing of like how we get peddled all of that. It comes from the classist thing, but it obviously isn't helped by what you were saying earlier, that we have such a kind of a partial press. Like it's, I mean, obviously in this country, for example, in other countries in Western Europe, you still get that. You still get like press bias. But from like personal experience, I would say it's nowhere near as bad as what we get lumbered with. I think the vast majority of our press is scum, really scum, like unbelievably so. So much that you kind of think, how can people actually believe this bollocks? But I suppose since, you know, if people is not that capable of like critical thinking, and they're taught that immigrants are the enemy, and, you know, they've been taught to basically not critically think and to vote for Christmas as a turkey year in, year out, then I suppose you can't really blame them. You know what I mean? And whilst that sounds really snotty and really kind of condescending, I do feel like a lot of people are suffering from that. You know, I think it's a very real problem. But having said that, do you think, actually, here's a question for both of you guys. Do you think that the tide is turning when it comes to that, because people are going to independent news sources?
Completely.
You reckon?
Oh yeah. I mean, there's, you know, you can see the reading figures and the buying figures of any right-wing newspaper. The Daily Mail's losing its grip. The Sun's losing its grip. You know, it's the reading figures speak for themselves. So
I think it's an aspect of, you know, the internet and that as well, is that whilst there is a lot of shit that we've talked about that comes from the internet, at the end of the day, we have a technology in our hands that has like all of the information that has been collected throughout human societies. Do you know what I mean? And that has got to eventually lead to more people, you know, reading and learning about what the fucking crack is. And I'm pretty sure that if people read and learn, and they will slowly come around to at least the ideas that we're thinking about. Like I honestly believe that. Do you know what I mean? If these even people like fucking Einstein was a socialist, do you know what I mean? And he gets pandied about.
Jesus was a socialist, for God's sake.
Well, yeah, exactly. Do you know what I mean? And I wanted to just really to bring it back to kind of you know, the class system and stuff we were talking about. Have either of you seen the film The Riot Club?
Yeah. Brilliant movie. Yes. Really good.
Yeah. Great film, and it's based on the Bullington
Boys,
yeah. And if you look at that, right, I was speaking to one of my my flatmates who he comes from Bulgaria. He's a pretty cool guy, but he was pretty clueless as to in terms of British politics and stuff like that. And I was showing him that, and I was surprised myself at the members list of that kind of stuff. And it's blatantly obvious. Do you know what I mean? And what you were saying, Cham, about like the education and that. It's obvious, you know what I mean? And then tinfoil hat alert again, you know, but you look at these societies that exist in these elite schools and that, and then in America, there's like the blood and the Skull and Bones Society and that. And they're a very similar sort of thing, like you know, an all boys club within an elite university.
It's a very unhealthy sort of toxic atmosphere. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And, you know, when people say sort of like, oh, Illuminati and all that kind of bullshit, I don't think it's that fucking, you don't need to stretch the imagination so far to imagine some of these.
No, I agree. You know,
talking to each other and fucking conspiring around, you know what I'm saying?
Yes, totally. And actually, look, conspiracy theories wouldn't exist without an element of truth. They always say, like people always say, there's no smoke without fire. That's bang on. Whilst people can turn around and say this person's a nutcase because they believe in this conspiracy, or that person's a nutcase because of this, there's always a grain of truth involved. And that's exactly. It
you watch much of InfoWars, do you?
Oh dear.
I don't.
You know,
I'll tell you what, when I was young and naive, in my early to mid 20s, I loved a bit of InfoWars. Alex Jones, he was on point for a bit. Like,
well, there were a lot less American nationalist kind of back in the day. a lot less, and it was more about they were focusing on kind of like the elites and the Illuminati, and I quite enjoyed a bit of Alex Jones when I was like 14, 15.
Do you know what? Yeah, but he's like a bit of a guilty pleasure for me as well. I love a bit of conspiracy. I love a bit of it. Oh yeah, but like, yeah, but I quite like him.
Hilarious.
Oh, I mean, he's obviously full of it, but I'm just saying, like, he's quite amusing. But like, I love a bit of conspiracy theory videos, like on YouTube and stuff. I like watch them the entire time and fall asleep to them.
Did you do all of the Zeitgeist videos?
No, I haven't. But actually, I'm a sub to tons of like podcasts on conspiracy theories and all this. Some are total bollocks, obviously, but like every now and again, you come across one and you're like, that sounds like it could be true. You know what I mean? Like, which is kind of worrying because you think, well, how much is being kept from people?
Probably most of it. You know what I mean?
Hey, Rodog, welcome to the stream. How you doing, my girl?
Hi, Ro.
How's it going?
Hello.
We're just talking about my favourite topic of conspiracy theories on YouTube.
Like we're supposed to be wrapping up the bloody stream. We spoke absolutely nothing about our hat trick that we put in earlier.
Yeah, man.
You know?
You were hardcore today, actually, with your streams. I have to admit, like one after the other. Very impressive.
Yeah, it was.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Like Anarchist was fucking brilliant. Old school, mate.
Thanks.
I had an idea of exactly what I wanted to do with the streams, and I wanted to keep them short and concise. And I really think we got.
Yeah, you did both.
Yeah, I'm glad, man, because honestly, it's the first time I've done anything like that apart from Swiss's channel. Like, I mean, you know, like one-on-one and questions and stuff like that, and I really enjoyed it. Like, and I'm glad you enjoyed it, Angels, and I hope like it was nice for the viewers and that. You know what I mean? So
I think it's really important too, because we're very different, aren't we? Like, if you think about it, like people who obviously have now linked up via Swiss's channel mainly, but like it's nice to essentially have like a civilized way of talking about differences, why people think certain ways and all that, because I feel like a lot of it, as I've said previously, like I'm not a fan of tribalism really. I prefer to hear actual facts and reasons why people believe certain things, which I think you nailed today. So well done, lads.
Thank you.
Nice one. Yeah.
I really wanted to keep it concise as well. I like, especially after Sunday's stream. I mean, that was what, 6 hours? Like, fuck, that was hardcore.
I was gutted.
It was really, really good. Actually, we got so much. I watched the replay. I did watch the replay. I had to skip though because it was fucking long. Yeah, that's the problem. Like when you see a cast that's 6 hours long, it does kind of alienate people, which is why I was like, okay, I'm going to break it up into
small chunks,
small chunks, yeah, and then people can see, if I'm that means I don't have to timestamp it afterwards, listen to it like over and over again, and timestamp it. And I would like to stick a timestamp in the Antifa section that we did, and timestamp and link Swiss's stream from Sunday on the debate that you guys had with vegan. That vegan, because that was really good. Like, and because JJ was piping up as well, and I thought that was really good to have him on there.
I really like JJ actually.
Yeah,
he's a really good guy.
I did want to say, I think we were talking about kind of what we're doing in terms of like Swiss's channel and this channel, and I think it's really quite important what we're doing in terms of like discourse on the internet, because a lot of it is quite polarizing and quite like single issue, if you will, or like sensationalist and clickbaity, and
of course, yeah.
And the conversations, like when me and Swiss get together in real life, we'll chat for like hours and just chilling
and smoke enormous spliffs as far as I've heard.
Oh, mate, coming from you,
those conversations are quite unique, And if we can have those conversations on a public forum where we're all at least, you know, coming to the table with honesty and because I think this is a problem with discourse on the internet, like because I'd go on Reddit quite often, and you know, there is always in the back of your mind, you know, it's going out to potentially millions of people. You know, obviously, I mean, let's hope, Cham, it goes out to millions of people. You'll be rolling in it then, but
I'll be lucky if it goes out to
the
10.
Potential is still there, you know what I mean? It's recorded on the internet, kind of.
That's what I mean, and inevitably, people sooner or later, it doesn't have to be in that same day, but inevitably, since it's there, people will end up seeing it.
Yeah, and
I think it's quite healthy. I think it's quite healthy to talk about this sort of stuff, because, like, you know, on programs like Question Time and things, and you've got members of the audience who, I mean, these days you don't really have to say something that controversial, and people will throw their hands in the air and act like they're the most offended they've ever been. It's like, well, I'm just trying to raise discussion and try and encourage debate, and it's like people are sort of have been sort of encouraged to sort of, if they don't like something, put their hands over their ears and like, well, I'm just going to shut you down because I don't like what you're saying. And I think these sorts of forums are quite good. So
they are good because, like I said, we have different people from across the spectrum, but also we're being civilized. Like, we're not like sort of name calling and being like, oh, you know, shut the fuck up because I don't like what you're saying. We're literally learning about the reason why people are following certain sort of ways of being, philosophies, etc. But agreeing that obviously, you know, we have differences, and that's the reason why we are having healthy debate. I feel like we are in sort of an era of I know people probably overuse this expression, but it's true, an era of like fake news, dog whistle politics, and personality bullshit. And I feel like actually, I will say that I do feel like the tide is turning. It's why I asked you guys this earlier. I feel like bullshit is being sniffed out more and more. You can sense the desperation at the Daily Mail and stuff. And I'm like thinking, okay, finally things are kind of breaking through and people are going, hold on.
Yeah,
maybe
but
this is not the best thing.
At the same time, I think there is the danger of you've got, you know, like this happens probably most in America, where you've got like no platforming and safe spaces in college campuses where you say you don't want a certain person talking.
I so don't agree with
that.
It's
like, well, you might disagree with that person and what they've got to say, but like free speech and everything, and as long as they're not abusing you or, you know, using racial slurs, etc., then they're well within their rights to, you know, explain that point. It's exactly why you know, they have debates and have people at the Oxford Union and talking to students, and like, of course, they've had loads of people there from all across the political spectrum.
Yeah.
And I think most recently they had I can't remember her name. That blonde woman from America, like
that cross-eyed blonde woman that's just been. She actually has hair like mine, sadly. But one of the guys in the side chat can tell me her name. But yeah, I disagree with. I mean, obviously she's a total retard when it comes to her views, but like that doesn't really. I don't understand why that means that she has to be banned from this country. I mean, she can be a total moron in full freedom.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly. So you shouldn't. That shouldn't be happening. Like, I understand that. Like,
I sense Old School's going to jump in.
Yeah,
we did talk about this.
Freedom of speech, etc.
Let's just put it this way. In my current students' union, we have the NUS has a no platform policy, right? And it's like they've got like a charter of certain organisations and certain groups that they don't allow on campuses and allow to. And on this charter is like Islamic extremists and stuff like that, and like very far right street organisations like the EDL and all that kind of stuff, yeah. And so it's already at the point where, especially in Britain, we are already restricting sort of certain ideas anyway. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, would you agree that ISIS or like the Islamic sort of extremists should be given a platform in university campuses? Because, you know, I think there's effects of certain speech. Do you know what I mean?
are, yes, but actually we're now that's a slightly different debate in the sense of we can then go into the grey areas of what's hate speech and what isn't.
Well, exactly.
You know,
this is exactly what we were chatting about
what
earlier.
is preying? What is preying on individuals? Like, what is preying on, for example, individuals who have mental health problems who are much more likely to be brainwashed?
Well, no, then you're talking about you know, attacking individuals, not attacking how individuals work together, and
you mean like
different websites and different how they work. But when you actually given a platform where they actually have an auditorium, you know, this is completely different. You know, is it right for this person to speak up and say every Muslim in this county is in some way or another predating your little sister, your daughter, your underage
brother, or your son, or whatever.
This is not right. I mean, because this does breed violence, but it is in an indirect way, I suppose. I suppose this is the difficulty.
It is censoring freedom of speech to an extent.
No, it's not, though.
Kind of is.
No, what, really? Like,
yeah, because I'm gonna look. I don't obviously agree with that kind of stuff, right? But like, to an extent, the moment that you start silencing individuals, even if they come out with rhetoric which is somewhat leading to perhaps violence or whatever, it doesn't go away. If anything, it sometimes makes people worse because they feel like they're being shut down, shut up, and so therefore this scheming in the background continues worse. So, like, where does it end? You know what I mean? It's not.
It is a slippery
obviously,
slope.
I don't agree with it.
I agree with you,
but it's a very difficult thing to actually sort of. Yeah.
I think when it comes to free speech and that, like, on the face of that idea, you're at least assuming the other people that you might be that are coming to that conversation in like good faith. You know what I mean? You assume that it is, you know, in the era of debate that we can, you know, good ideas should prevail, and you know, people who have bad ideas, given, you know, what you're saying, complete freedom of speech, they will just, you know, everybody will see what kind of bullshit they are. But what seems to happen, and like we mentioned on the stream earlier, a guy called Carl Schmitt, like a Nazi in the 1922, he's said that liberal democracies, this was his theory, that liberal democracies would allow fascism to grow within it, and they would be able to use the fact of free speech and use their values to undermine their society and undermine their values. So it's when free speech is used not as an advocation of like freedom of people.
You mean like when it's weaponized?
Yeah. And
but I mean, but surely that is not representative of like the vast majority of people, is it? I mean, like, I don't have a lot of faith.
No, this is why it's just fascists that we're talking about here.
But they're trying to do that in America at the moment, aren't they?
Sorry, Road Dog. Can you that was can you reverse a bit and then rephrase it? Because I didn't catch what you said.
I just said that sort of rhetoric is sort of being used in America.
What rhetoric?
That the idea that they sort of use their First Amendment of the right to free speech, and then sort of weaponizing it as a way of saying, well, I can do and say whatever I like, and if you challenge me or threaten me, then you're suppressing me.
Exactly right. And again, we not in the American sense, but we did talk about that I think we do see this, especially in America, is that when people say, oh, I believe in free speech, they'll then say that gives me the right to say very hateful things about a certain people in society, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah, you know? Going back specifically to people that breed hate speech, you know, people like Katie Hopkins, or who was that guy we were talking about earlier? Because I know he's your best friend. Old School.
Tommy Robinson.
Tommy Robinson. That's
yeah.
it. You know, the speech that Tommy Robinson and Katie Hopkins have spoken, there is an evidential link to violence.
Yeah.
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 So there has to be a line in the dirt somewhere.
Exactly, but where is that? This is the entire point. Like you can't have, like, the way that I see it is you can't really have it both ways. If you want full sort of civil liberty, but at the same time you want to silence people, those two don't necessarily go hand in hand.
I disagree. I disagree with you. This is not a binary debate. There are 50 Shades of Grey.
You could have told me that pre-Brexit, for fuck's sake. Like, don't talk to me about binary questions on complicated issues.
What I would say to that, Angels, is what I would say to that is I don't really, do you know, in terms of freedom of speech and freedom of expression and stuff like that, yeah, the government, what we're talking about is state sanctioned sort of like you can be arrested for the
so like being arrested for hate speech versus just saying something that someone doesn't like.
From my perspective, I don't really necessarily agree with state intervention on that kind of thing. I think it should be up to communities to organize against this kind of thing when it happens. So I'm not trying to take away their fucking rights to speak. I'm just going to say that if certain speech, and I would say the same about, white supremacists or fucking ISIS and all their kind of Islamic extremism and like Zionism, these sort of ideologies, if you're going to promote them and organize for them, you do it all day long, but be prepared for the consequences of that speech. And unfortunately,
so your point earlier was exactly this, right? Because you said, look, the people can come out with this stuff because it's their right in order to actually do so, but be prepared basically to get punched.
In a roundabout way, because and I wanted to make a point I didn't really get onto in terms of what we're talking about is kind of like the use of violence and that kind of stuff against suppressing certain views and that kind of thing. And people say, oh well, at the point that you start using violence, then you've already lost, or you've kind of politics should be free of violence. But in my opinion, and you could make, I think I can make a pretty good objective case that the majority of political systems rely on violence at some point. Like
or threat, or
the threat of violence. At least.
The other thing is what I said earlier is if you want liberties when it comes to the other side, freedoms for people that you want to protect, some more freedoms for the people that are marginalized, more freedoms for people on the poorer side. Then sometimes it does take violence to get those freedoms, because liberties are not.
You mean you need to kind of get it by force, regardless, at certain times?
Well, liberties are never given; they're always taken. That if we look throughout history.
And I think
it's not words.
Deeds, not words, indeed.
I agree, and I think if we can look at like history and that, there are like countless examples of resistances and revolutions and stuff that were very confrontational and illegal and involved a lot of violence and what have you. And we're talking big historical events like the American Revolution and like Stonewall and like the miners sort of labor movements and all that kind of shit, India and civil rights and all of these events in history. Yeah, you could make the case that these because it's kind of like the difference with the civil rights movement between what Martin Luther King and like the Black Panthers and all that. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, they represent, obviously one side was talking about peaceful resistance, which I completely agree with. Non-violent methods are completely what we should be considering at least first. But then you had Malcolm X, who represented kind of the Black Panthers and the more sort of like militant take on that. And if it weren't for both of them, in my opinion, I don't think it would have happened the way it happened.
Well, even Gandhi said that when you make diplomacy impossible, you make violence necessary. So it it is. Jack James said something, just after you said, sorry, Angels, laugh out loud. I'm not sure what you were laughing out loud at. But
because Cameron, because Cameron said, for once, I'm saying that Angels is right. Me and Cameron are sort of like frenemies. And so for him to ever say I'm right is like mental. But yeah, carry on.
I disagree. If you're a free speech absolutist, then technically you have to let radical Islamist militants speak. For me, it's a question of who decides which speech is damaging. That's the tricky question. Jack James, I've got an easy one for you, is that if there is evidence of violence, as in threat of life-threatening violence on any speech, then you've got to label that kind of speech as damaging. I know there's a lot, that's a broad stroke, but when you look at things like fascism and Islamist militants, and when they're looking to especially indoctrinate young Islamists, and especially young fascists, then you've got to see this speech as damaging to society as a whole, and you've got to see that people like Antifa are really doing something for the good of society, despite some of the optics looking really,
there are
really
downers to it, yes, but there are downers to it, and people need to recognize that too. When Jack James also said, he brings up another really important point, and it was I remember it was I think I spoke to you, Rowan, about this before, but when I realized that our politics took a turn for the worse really badly was when you had the Daily Mail headline of "Enemies of the People" talking about our independent justices. Now, one of the things that I feel is dear to our country and totally and utterly necessary on every single level is the independence of our judicial system. That, to me, makes or breaks somewhere. When your country is so bad, your press is so raggy, that it turns around and tries to call out independent justices and what they have ruled doing their job as enemies of the people, you're in the gutter, right?
Definitely.
And this is where the moment I saw that was so disturbing to me. I was like, have we really sunk this far? And that was, to me, a pivotal Brexit moment. When you suddenly think, what has this country become? That to me was one of them. The other one was the Tory rebels being named on the front as being mutineers because they voted by their conscience, which is what they're meant to fucking do.
Exactly.
I'm sorry.
Crush the saboteurs headline as well.
Exactly. Crush the saboteurs, same thing. Damaging, dangerous headlines with absolutely nothing to back it up, simply by individuals doing their jobs.
That's the point. That's the point in which you've reached a point where the government are doing, or vice versa, the government and the media are doing each other's dirty work.
This was, to me, I was ashamed to be British in both of those moments. Well, all three of those. I thought that was so disgusting that we literally have these rats under the floorboards coming out and sort of saying things like this, and the press are on board with it. I'm sorry, I don't associate with a country like that. If you want to go into the gutter after all that, and you want to turn around and actually say this in a mainstream paper, you are alone, mate, because you're having nothing to do with anyone like me.
It's shocking that people in power, like the authorities, don't call this out more. They just seem to let it slide, which is just horrific.
Angel, so just to add something, just to your Sorry, I completely agree, and this kind of rant, it's not just damaging to human life; it's damaging to democracy. But
that's what I think exactly.
One specific point that I want to get down to is with regards to the Gina Miller case. and it was the Daily Mail headline. What was it?
Of course it was.
Yeah, what was it? What was it? Enemies of the state? Was that right?
Enemies of the
Was
people.
that the headline? Enemies of the people. Okay. Okay.
So 3
Now, this was
independent justices doing their job.
I think I was talking to you about this on Sunday, wasn't I?
The Supreme Court. So it's already been through, was it 2 courts before it's even got there?
Yeah.
So this has taken 6 months.
They did their job.
Government. Yeah, I know. This is the government essentially fighting against, or the Tories, shall I say more specifically, the Tories fighting against the
democracy.
Democracy.
The independent, yeah. You know, the independence of the judicial system, basically.
And this is why I have such a disdain for the Tories, is because they disrespect democracy. In fact, they think that giving us democracy is our privilege, when really it's our right.
Right. Well, I mean, yes, I largely agree with what you're saying, but I will go one step further and say that I believe that it could, on that particular level, especially since how gutter politics has become overall, I think it could happen with pretty much every party, including Labour. So I'm under no illusions that, you know, one is going to be worse than the other. At this point, yes, I'll probably grant you the fact that this government is entirely horrendous. I don't think it can run a bath, let alone anything else. I think I think that there are like countless things that you could call them out on, because they're just losers. Like overall, they're just complete and utter losers. There is no sticking up for this government. I don't care if you're a Tory voter. They're obviously a bunch of absolute incompetence, and they need to get out. It's time to regroup, to try and sort of figure out what they stand for. If that means Jeremy Corbyn in number 10, am I a fan of that? As you guys well know, no, I'm not. But do I think that pretty much anything's favourable to this bunch of shit? Yes, I do. So,
sorry, everybody. I'm really sorry. I was Road Dog as well. I'm really sorry. I know you wanted to jump in on that, but I really wanted to just ask Captain Swiss, like with the promise that we said about 30 minutes ago. Do you want to do it here, or do you want to do it on your channel? If you want to do it on your channel, then I'll wrap up here and we'll join you there. Or do you want to do it here? What do you think?
I'll probably do it on my channel, because there's a lot of my audience who probably won't be able to see it here, even if I do share it on Twitter. So
fair enough.
That's all right with you guys.
Enough. No, that's fair enough. I'll wrap up here then. So Road Dog, sorry, you wanted to add something.
Yeah, sorry, I was just gonna say, just to add to Angel's point, and I completely agree. Yeah, I completely agree that we need to get this government out, but also the idea that the day after the referendum, this rhetoric that's been sort of swirling around that democracy ended the day after the 23rd of June, and outside of that time no one is allowed opinion to the contrary. And like, it's not true at all. Like, I mean, I think Ian Hislop made a really good point a couple of times about this during and after the referendum, that once you've had a vote, the opposition are entitled to keep on making the argument even though you've lost. And they, like, you know, do you think Labour decide that, you know, if every time the Conservatives win in an election, do you think they decide to, you know, bugger off home and not contribute anymore for 5 years? And it's like the people just getting slammed to the ground for having an opposite argument against Brexit going through. Exactly. It's like, you can't say that because you're a traitor. And it's like, hang on a minute, just like, hang on, back up. And I'm just trying to get
it's bullshit tactics to try and shut down you know, discussion,
any opposition
bullshit, you know. The moment you say anything against capitalism, you know, you're paying too much for your energy. Marxist. You're paying too much for your travel. Marxist.
Well, do you actually not find it interesting that we do appear to have been with our current government adopting a lot of what looks to me like very Miliband-esque tactics.
They are. They're totally Miliband.
I was saying this yesterday, but like, I don't think they're doing it through conscience. I think they're doing it because they know that they're going to fucking get buried.
I think they know.
I feel like it's because they know it's a vote loser if they don't. Yeah.
Yeah. They know it's got out of hand.
Look, as for
the
my
jig
nights,
is up.
yeah, James, I think they know it's over for them, if I'm honest. Coming from a nice centrist perspective, I sort of feel like on this channel, all the others actually, that I can sort of see things for what they are to some extent. I'm not like perfect, obviously, but like I do feel like they kind of know the game's up. I think that they know that they are going to be destroyed, and so they have to throw, even if it's crumbs, they have to do something.
Yeah.
Plus, they know they're vulnerable now anyway.
So sorry.
Definitely,
We're opening up a can of worms here, mate. Let's wrap this up. So what we're going to do is we're going to wrap this up here. Again, thank you to everybody. Thank you to for the wrap up with Captain Switzerland. Old School, you're a legend as always. Angels, absolutely wicked. Road Dog, thank you for coming in at the last moment.
That's all right.
Always great to hear your voice. And of course, Swiss. We're going to come and see you in a bit. Do you want to give us a sneaky peek of what's coming on?
Right.
Or we're going to talk about?
Yeah, we're going to be speaking about the statements of the House of Commons on the whole Salisbury poisoning issue. Theresa May's given her response to what's going on. She'd given the Russians a day and a half to get back to her to say whether they were the ones behind the chemical attack or whether they lost control of their stockpile. The Russians had done neither and had requested a sample of the alleged nerve agent. So now May has unequivocally blamed the Russians for the attack. Corbyn's basically said, maybe we should do things.
All of it, man. We don't need to go on your channel then.
yeah. In that case, anyway, I'll be dropping links to the Hangout through to you guys if you can share them with each other, and I'll be starting up in a few minutes.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much.
Well,
also, go on, Angels. Have you got anything
yeah,
to plug while you're here?
I was just going to say, subscribe to pretty much all of our channels, including Road Dog, who does really great content. She's probably one of the most underrated people that I'm subscribed to right now. So definitely subscribe to her. Subscribe to all of us. I don't use mine for content much, but I do last minute streams. So it's worthwhile just kind of signing up so that you will know, get a notification, etc. But yeah, in the meantime, thank you for having me, Tamti.
As at any time, Angels, anytime. Always got time for a centrist, as long as you understand that you're wrong.
you're one of very few people, I tell you, especially nowadays.
All right, nice one. All right, okay. So thank you very much. Like, subscribe, share, all those things. See you in a bit, guys.
Bye.
Later.
Bye.